Hi, Black Recap here. Today, I am going to explain a film called Heaven is for Real. Watch out and take care. Todd Burpo is a pastor from a small town in Nebraska. From morning till night, the man works to provide for his family. He is not afraid to take on any job, helping everyone in need. When he returns home, the pastor spends time with his son and teaches him to be kinder to people. After receiving a message from the hospital, the man goes there to meet an old man who is seriously ill and in need of confession. Afraid to leave this world, he confesses his sins and tells the church minister about them. During another meeting, Todd gives a solemn speech and encourages people to have faith in God. He is convinced that we are all capable of dealing with the trials that the Almighty sends, as this is the only way to find our way to heaven. Convincing his parishioners of this, the man tells the old parable of the animals whose salvation was a good mission, enabling them not to betray their faith. Meeting Jay Wilkins, the pastor arranges for a softball game to be held under the auspices of the church. The next day, Todd acts bravely in an attempt to win the game. During another run, he falls and breaks his leg. Having survived this difficult and painful ordeal, he continues to lead the service, reminding that everyone should be prepared for pain and suffering leading to something good. During the story, the man becomes ill and falls to the floor. At the hospital, it turns out that he has kidney problems and stones are coming out of his body. Suffering from pain, the pastor does not stop believing in the existence of God and his plan. A few days later, Sony invites her husband to go away to Denver for the weekend. He reluctantly accepts his wife's offer, as their children need their rest. At the botanical garden, little Cassie is not frightened by a huge tarantula and plays with a spider. Colton also wants to hold it in his hands, but is hesitant to do so. When the children return home, they feel sick and constantly vomit. A couple of days later, the daughter recovers and plays peacefully in the yard, but the son continues to suffer from pain and fever. Suspecting that the boy has a serious illness, the parents take him to the hospital. During an examination, it turns out that the boy has burst appendicitis, infecting his stomach and other internal organs. A major operation is required, during which the child may not survive. Knowing this, the pastor goes to the local temple and shouts at God, who has brought down a series of setbacks on him. Sony is depressed by what is happening and weeps bitterly. Calling Nancy, who looks after her daughter, she asks for prayer for her son. The villagers know the boy well and fear for him, praying for his health. Soon the doctor reports that the operation was a success and Colton has recovered. The parents visit the boy and are reassured that he is well. A couple of weeks later, the family travels back to Denver. Stripped of his fears and doubts, the child calmly plays with the spider and receives the long-awaited sticker. A little later, the boy confesses to his father that he left his body during the operation, saw angels and communicated with God. The pastor believes his son, for the 4-year-old would not lie to him. At the same time, the truth frightens the man, because he realizes that heaven exists not only in the pages of the Bible, but also in real life. On his return home, Todd tells his wife everything, but she is skeptical of his son and husband's words. Talking to Colton, the father continues to learn more and more about heaven and what it is all about. It turns out that God looks different, as he has blue-green eyes. Hearing this, the pastor is horrified and realizes that his previous study of religion has been flawed. Trying to find a reasonable explanation, the man meets with Dr. Charlotte Slater. The skeptical psychiatrist is convinced that it may be the effects of clinical death or the boy's rich fantasy, but not reality. On meeting Jay, the pastor declines his friend's financial help. The parishioners of the church are concerned about what is happening, as the boy is questioning everything they hold sacred. A meeting is scheduled to decide the pastor's future ministry. Soon journalists find out about what is happening and want to meet the boy to interview him. The boy talks about angels, God and everything that happened to him in the hospital ward. Some of the townspeople begin to make fun of the pastor, thinking that his son's words are nonsense and childish fantasies. Cassie is bullied at school, but the brave girl rebuffs the bullies. Upon learning of this, the father doesn't scold his daughter, but wants to teach her how to fight so that her hands remain unharmed. Receiving an emergency call, Todd is part of the firefighters who go to the site and eliminate the source of the fire. During this, one of the men becomes an accidental victim. A little later, the pastor meets with church workers and learns that they are looking for his replacement. On arriving at the hospital, the man is unable to pay for hospital services due to lack of money. The son insists that his father give the last of it, as his life has been saved here. Despite this, the man is unable to pay for the operation and his debt is passed on to debt collectors. At some point, Colton runs away and finds the boy sick with cancer. Taking him by the hand, the enlightened toddler reassures the child and gives him hope for a brighter future. Trusting his son, the pastor goes on to investigate his son's strange memories. He assumes that it could be hallucinations or the effects of clinical death, but finds no logical justification for what is happening. His wife is angry that her husband is fixated on this and remains skeptical of her son's memories, believing it is all the boy's rich imagination. The pastor and Colton go to the cemetery to say goodbye to the man who passed away in the fire. Here too, the boy reveals that he has been in contact with his father's grandfather. Showing some pictures, Todd learns that the son saw his great-grandfather young, and in heaven everyone is like that. Studying the books, the pastor realizes that space is timeless in the other world, so the little boy was in heaven much longer than the surgery lasted. Arriving at the soldier's grave, the pastor meets his mother. The woman is broken and has not been able to recover from the loss of her son. A similar feeling was felt by the man who was worried about the baby during the operation. He felt anger and hatred, but believed in God and hoped he would save his son. Nancy was saddened, for his heir the Almighty had no mercy and took him to himself. Sensing the pastor's support, the parishioner begins to believe his words and apologizes for his behavior and attempt to expel the man from the church. At the same time, Colton, who has stayed at home with his mother, tells her that he has a sister. Sony reminds her of Cassie, but the boy talks about the unborn girl. The mother is shocked, as neither she nor her husband has ever told anyone about this. Realizing her son knows more than he should, she begins to trust the child and his tales of paradise. The boy says that he has seen her in heaven, hugging and walking with his sister. From this moment on, the parents are finally convinced that their son is special. Organizing a meeting in church, the pastor tells the congregation about their son meeting angels and the Lord. He is now convinced that heaven is not a fairy tale place described in books but a reality. Nevertheless, each of us must realize that heaven is not accessible to everyone, and we must behave properly. Besides, there is a heaven on earth. Just think of the first smile of a child, the joyful moments and moments that fill our life. Hell, too, is not only after death, but in our world, it is the cry, the pain and the suffering that we have to endure. Touched by the pastor's sincerity, the congregation begins to believe in his words and are not about to exorcise Todd. Playing the piano, Nancy sees her son for the last time and becomes convinced of the existence of a higher power. Sometime later, the man finds a video on the internet in which a little girl living in Latvia has been to heaven and draws divine pictures. In one of them, Colton recognizes God, the real and only God. The pastor becomes convinced that these children are special and have been able to meet the Almighty face to face. At the same time, his wife informs him that they are about to have a baby. 9 months later, another boy is born to the family, whom they decide to name Colby. 6 years later, Todd publishes his son's stories of heaven, while being far from a saint, and the boy cannot be called an angel, and movie ends here. Please like and subscribe, and click the bell icon to get new movie recaps.